Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening a file that I think is going to make you look at every meeting you have ever sat in.
Oh, for sure.
And probably every meeting you will ever sit in completely differently.
It is a pervasive one. It's one of those topics that once you see the mechanics of it, you just can't unsee it.
Right.
It really changes the way you view human dynamics.
We are tackling a mystery that I think every single person listening has witnessed. Maybe you've even, participated in it.
Mm-hmm.
It is the mystery of how groups of undeniably smart, experienced, well-meaning people, people who are individually brilliant, the best and the brightest,
Right.
can get together in a room and make absolute catastrophic decisions.
Yep.
Decisions that, none of them would have ever made on their own.
It is the classic smart people, bad decisions paradox.
Exactly. And I feel like the immediate reaction when we see a corporate disaster or a government blunder or, heck, even a homeowners association meltdown is to say, oh, they were just sheep, or it was peer pressure, or they were stupid. But the stack of research we have today suggests it is something much more specific.
Much more structural.
Yes, and honestly, a lot more dangerous than just simple peer pressure.
Right. We are exploring the phenomenon of groupthink.
Yeah.
And you are right to distinguish it from peer pressure. Those are, they're cousins, but they aren't twins.
Okay.
Peer pressure is usually about compliance. You do it because you want to fit in, even if you know it's wrong. You feel that friction.
You know you're faking it.
Exactly. Groupthink is different. It is a psychological trap where the desire for harmony within the group actually sort of overrides your ability to see reality.
So you don't just go along with it.
No. You rationalize it. You rationalize it until you believe it's the right thing to do.
That is the terrifying part. It's rationalized conformity. You aren't just faking it. You're hacking your own brain to agree.
That is the perfect phrase for it. Rationalized conformity.
So we have a massive stack today. We have history, we have psychology, and we have some truly tragic case studies from the Bay of Pigs to the Space Shuttle Challenger.
Heavy stuff.
We're going to look at the symptoms so we can spot them, look at the disasters to see the cost, and most importantly, we need to get to the cure.
Right.
But before we get to the cure, we have to understand the disease. Where does this term actually come from? Because groupthink, it sounds Orwellian.
That is no accident.
Yeah.
The term was actually coined back in 1952 by William H. White Jr. in Fortune magazine.
Fortune, so a business publication.
Yes, and he explicitly derived it from George Orwell's 1984, specifically the concept of doublethink.
So it was a purposeful nod to that kind of, dystopian mind control.
Very much so. You have to remember the context of 1952. This is the era of the organization man.
Right. The man in the gray flannel suit.
Exactly. Corporate culture in America was booming, and there was this big shift from the rugged individualist to the company man. White wasn't just talking about, instinctive conformity. He was criticizing what he saw as a rationalized conformity in the corporate world. He felt there was this articulate philosophy emerging that said, group values are inherently right and good.
So he was worried that people were just giving up their own judgment to the committee.
He was dismayed. He called it the tyranny of groups.
So originally it was a critique of 1950s corporate culture, a critique of the idea that the committee knows best.
Exactly. But the science, the rigorous psychological framework we use today, that really comes from Irving Janis.
Okay.
He's a research psychologist at Yale University. In 1972, he published the seminal book, Victims of Groupthink. And that book, it changed everything regarding how we understand decision-making.
And how did he define it? Because groupthink is a word that gets thrown around a lot in pop culture now.
It does.
People often just use it to mean people agreeing too much. But Janis had a really specific definition.
He did. Janis defined it as a mode of thinking that people engage in when concurrent seeking.
Concurrent seeking.
That desire to agree becomes so dominant in a cohesive in-group that it overrides any realistic appraisal of alternative courses of action.
That's the killer phrase. It's valuing the good vibes of the meeting over the actual outcome of the decision.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Janis wasn't looking at low-stakes decisions. He didn't care about a group deciding, where to go for lunch.
Right.
He studied major American foreign policy disasters, Pearl Harbor, the Bay of Pigs, the escalation in Vietnam. He found that in every case, it wasn't that the leaders were stupid. It wasn't that they lacked data.
It was the group dynamic.
It was that the group dynamic prevented contradictory views from being expressed.
So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to understand the symptoms so we can spot them. essentially, how do we diagnose this infection in our own teams?
Right.
Then we need to look at those historical disasters to see the cost and then figure out how to stop it. Let's start with the diagnosis. What causes this? Because most of us think a tight-knit team is a good thing, right?
We do.
We want cohesiveness. I mean, HR spends millions of dollars on retreats to build cohesiveness.
And that is the great paradox of groupthink. Janice identified high group cohesiveness as the primary antecedent, the main trigger.
Wait, hold on. So liking your team is the problem? The fact that we get along is the danger zone?
It sounds counterintuitive, but yeah, it is the precondition for the problem.
How so?
Think about it. Groups that lack cohesiveness, where everyone hates each other or barely knows each other, they might make bad decisions because they are arguing or disjointed, but they don't experience groupthink.
Okay.
They don't have that pressure to conform. Groupthink happens when the members are so friendly, so tight-knit, that they avoid speaking out against decisions to maintain those friendly relationships.
I see. It's the fear of rocking the boat. If I don't know you, I don't mind contradicting you. But if we are, best friends and we have this great team spirit, I don't want to be the one to ruin the vibe.
You value the relationship more than the truth.
Right.
Correct. But, and this is a crucial nuance, cohesiveness alone isn't enough. You can have a cohesive team that makes great decisions.
Okay, so it's not always bad.
No. Yanis noted it becomes dangerous when you combine that high cohesiveness with structural faults.
What kind of faults?
Things like the group being insulated from the outside world. If you only talk to each other, you create an echo chamber.
Makes sense.
Or a lack of impartial leadership. If the boss makes it clear what they want before the discussion even starts.
Oh, that's a big one.
Huge. Or a lack of norms requiring methodical procedures. I mean, if you don't have a checklist for how to disagree, you just won't do it.
And I imagine stress plays a role, too. I mean, most of these disasters happen during crises.
A huge role. Situational context matters. If there's a highly stressful external threat or recent failures that have lowered the group's self-esteem, they're more likely to huddle together.
For safety.
They seek consensus for comfort rather than debating the hard facts. It's emotional safety seeking.
Okay, so we have the recipe. We have a tight team, a stressful situation, maybe a leader who isn't impartial, and we are cut off from outside voices. How do we know if we've crossed the line from good team to groupthink? Yanis actually gave us a checklist, right?
He did. He devised 8 symptoms. And they are fascinating because they fall into 3 distinct categories.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this and thinking about your own workplace, this is where you really want to pay attention.
Let's break these down. Category 1 is overestimations of the group.
This is where the group starts to feel untouchable. The first symptom here is the illusion of invulnerability. It creates excessive optimism. The group starts to take extreme risks because they genuinely feel we are us, we are the best, we can't fail.
That feels like every startup right before they crash, or frankly, every empire right before it falls.
Often, yes, it's a blinding confidence.
Yeah.
The second symptom in this category is an unquestioned belief in the morality of the group.
Yep.
Members believe so strongly in the inherent rightness of their cause that they just ignore the ethical or moral consequences of their decisions.
So they assume we are good people, therefore our decisions must be good.
Exactly. It completely shuts down the ethical debate. You don't ask, is this right? Because you assume, since we are doing it, it must be right.
Which is a dangerous logical leap. Okay, category 2, closed-mindedness. This is about how the group deals with the outside world.
Right. This is the defense mechanism. First, you have rationalizing warnings. When red flags appear, and they always do, that challenge the group's assumptions.
You explain them away.
Yes. Instead of investigating them, the group collectively constructs a reason to explain them away.
Oh, that data point is an outlier, or that critic just doesn't get our vision, or that drop in sales is just because of the weather.
Exactly. You spend your mental energy explaining why the warning is wrong, rather than asking if it might be right.
And that leads to the next one.
It does. Stereotyping the outgroup. The group starts to view anyone who opposes them, competitors, critics, even other departments, as weak, evil, biased, stupid, or impotent.
That seems critical because if you think your enemy or the competition is stupid, you are going to underestimate them.
And you won't prepare for their reaction, it blinds you. If you think the competition is incompetent, you stop innovating.
Okay, category 3. This is the one that really hits home for me. Pressures toward uniformity. This is what happens inside the room.
This is the internal policing mechanism. First, you have self-censorship.
The silent killer.
It really is.
Yeah.
This is when you have a doubt, you see a flaw, but you keep it to yourself. You avoid deviating from the consensus. You think, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this is a bad idea, so I'll just stay quiet.
I think everyone has felt that. You look around the table, everyone else is nodding, and you think, am I the crazy one?
And because everyone is self-censoring, you get the next symptom, the illusion of unanimity.
Right. Silence is viewed as agreement.
Everyone assumes everyone else agrees. So you look around the room, you see no objections, and you think, wow, everyone loves this idea. But in reality, half the room might be terrified, but they're all looking at each other's masks.
It's a hall of mirrors. But there's another specific term in this category that I love. Well, I don't love the behavior, but the name is so descriptive. Mind guards.
Ah, yes, mind guards. These are fascinating. These are self-appointed members who shield the group from dissenting information.
It sounds like a sci-fi villain, the mind guard.
It acts like one. It isn't usually a formal role on the org chart. It's someone who takes it upon themselves to say, hey, let's not bother the CEO with that negative report, or let's not bring up that legal risk right now. It'll just kill the momentum.
So they're protecting the group from bad news.
They protect the group from adverse facts that might break the shared complacency.
They think they are helping. They think they're protecting the leader or the team's focus.
Exactly. But they are actually cutting the team off from reality.
So let's recap the diagnosis. You have a group that feels invulnerable and morally superior. They rationalize away any warnings and think their enemies are stupid. And inside the group, everyone is self-censoring, assuming everyone else agrees, and there are specific people actively hiding bad news.
Yeah.
That sounds like a recipe for absolute disaster.
And history confirms it. It is a recipe for catastrophe.
Let's move to section 2 and talk about those expensive lessons. Because Giannis didn't just theorize this in a lab, he pulled it from the headlines. The grandfather of all groupthink case studies is the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. Right. Set the scene for us. Why is this the perfect example?
This was the primary case study Giannis used to build his theory. You have to look at the personnel. You have the Kennedy administration. These were the best and the brightest, as David Halberstam called them.
Right.
Highly intellectual, experienced people, Harvard deans, corporate titans. And they inherited a plan from the Eisenhower administration to use Cuban exiles to invade Cuba and overthrow Fidel Castro.
And on paper, to them, it just looked like a standard covert operation.
To them, perhaps. But the failure was that Kennedy's team just uncritically accepted the CIA's plan. They exhibited classic groupthink symptoms throughout the entire planning phase.
Give us the specifics. How did those symptoms we just talked about manifest in the White House Situation Room?
First, stereotyping. They had a total contempt for Castro. They assumed his Air Force was ineffective, his army was weak, and crucially, they assumed that the Cuban people would immediately rise up and join the invaders. They completely underestimated the outgroup.
So illusion of invulnerability. They thought, we're the United States, he is just a dictator in the Caribbean, he'll fold.
100%. But what about the internal dynamic? Surely someone in that room thought, this is a bad idea? The plan had huge holes.
Right. Did anyone speak up?
They did, initially. Arthur M. Schlesinger, Jr., a famous historian and special assistant to Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, historian, right.
He had serious objections. So did Senator Fulbright. But the group dynamic just crushed it. The group ignored Fulbright. And Schlesinger, this is the tragic part. Schlesinger admitted later that he minimized his own doubts.
That's self-censorship.
Textbook.
But why would a man like Schlesinger silence himself?
He wrote about it later. He said he felt an enormous pressure not to be the nuisance. He didn't want to break the camaraderie of the new administration. They were the new guys in town. They were bonding. There were also line guards. Robert Kennedy, the president's brother and attorney general, actually took Schlesinger aside at a party.
At a party? Not even in a formal meeting?
Nope, at a party. He pulled him aside and told him, you may be right or you may be wrong, but the president has made his mind up. Don't push it any further.
Wow. That is the definition of a mind guard. Shut up for the good of the team.
Exactly. He was shielding the leader from dissent. And because of that silence, the plan went forward with fatal flaws. The air support failed. The uprising never happened. The invaders were slaughtered or captured immediately.
A total fiasco. A humiliation on the global stage.
But here is the twist and the hope. Just 1 year later, 1962, the same administration faced the Cuban Missile Crisis, a much, much higher stakes situation.
Nuclear war was on the table.
Right.
Did they fall into the same trap? Did they groupthink their way into World War III?
No. And this is crucial. Kennedy learned. He realized the process had failed him at the Bay of Pigs, He realized that his presence and the group's niceness had blinded them.
So for the missile crisis, he changed the rules.
He completely changed the rules.
What did he do differently?
Well, for one, he invited outside experts to come in and challenge them. He encouraged members to discuss solutions with trusted people outside the inner circle to get fresh perspectives.
Breaking the insulation.
Yes. And famously, Kennedy deliberately absented himself from some of the meetings.
So he wouldn't be the leader anchoring the opinion.
Exactly. He knew that if he was in the room, people would try to please him or guess what he wanted. He wanted them to debate without that pressure. It was a vigilant appraisal, not a concurrent seeking session.
And it worked.
Most historians agree that this shift in process likely saved the world from nuclear war.
That is a powerful example of how process matters more than just IQ. You can have the smartest people in the world, but if the process is bad, you get the Bay of Pigs. If the process is good, you solve the missile crisis.
Precisely. Intelligence doesn't save you from groupthink. Process saves you.
Let's look at another military example, going back a bit further. Pearl Harbor, 1941. This seems harder to pin on groupthink because it was a surprise attack. How does groupthink fit here?
It fits into the lack of preparation. It explains why the surprise was so total. The U.S. Navy and Army officers in Hawaii weren't completely in the dark. Washington had set warnings that Japan was arming for an offensive somewhere in the Pacific. But the group in Hawaii, the admirals and generals, shared rationalizations to dismiss them.
What were they telling themselves?
Janus documents specific quotes that were circulating among the high command in Hawaii. They said things like, "The Japanese would never dare attempt a full-scale surprise assault because it would mean all-out war, which the U.S. would surely win."
That's the illusion of invulnerability again. We are too big to be hit.
Exactly. And I remember reading something about the torpedoes specifically.
Yes. This is a technical rationalization. They convinced themselves that no warships anchored in the shallow water of Pearl Harbor could ever be sunk by torpedo bombs.
They believed the water was physically too shallow for torpedoes to drop and arm themselves before hitting the bottom.
So they relied on that assumption rather than preparing for the possibility that the enemy had innovated.
Correct. And the Japanese had innovated. They developed wooden fins for their torpedoes, specifically for shallow water.
Wow.
The American commanders were closed-minded. They didn't ask what if they figure it out. They just assumed they can't.
It's that refusal to rethink your assumptions. It's comforting to think the enemy can't touch you. It's scary to think they can. So the group chooses comfort.
Until the bombs start falling.
Let's jump forward to a more modern tragedy, and one that involves engineers and hard data. 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger.
This one is heartbreaking because we know exactly who the dissenters were and we know exactly how they were silenced.
It is heartbreaking, and it's a classic example of how stress and structure combine. The pressure here was intense.
Right.
NASA had a self-imposed schedule. They wanted to launch for the State of the Union address. They had the first civilian, Krista McAuliffe, a teacher, on board. The publicity stakes were huge. The group was under siege from the schedule.
And there was a technical problem, a very specific one.
The O-rings. These were rubber seals in the rocket boosters. Engineers from Morton Thiokol, the contractor who built the boosters, explicitly warned that the cold temperatures on launch day, it was freezing in Florida that morning, could cause the O-rings to become brittle and fail.
So they said delay. They recommended a delay. So the warning was there. It wasn't a surprise. The data was in the room.
It was in the room. There was a conference call. The engineers said, don't launch. But the NASA management team, caught in the illusion of invulnerability regarding the shuttle's safety record.
They had never lost a crew.
Right. And feeling the pressure of the schedule, they pushed back. And this is where the dynamic gets really dark.
Yes. A senior NASA manager famously said to the Thiokol team, "My God, Thiokol, when do you want me to launch?" "Next April." That is extreme pressure. But then they did something technically devastating.
What was that?
They shifted the burden of proof.
Explain that.
Usually in aerospace, you have to prove it is safe to fly. If there is doubt, you don't go.
Right. Safety first.
In this meeting, because of the groupthink pressure, they demanded the engineers prove it was unsafe.
That's a completely different standard. Prove to me 100% that it will blow up.
And the engineers couldn't prove it 100% because they didn't have data for those specific low temperatures. So the managers took the silence of the data as permission to launch.
And then you have the mind guard moment within Thiokol.
Yes. The Thiokol managers, feeling the pressure from their client NASA, went offline to talk. The general manager turned to his vice president of engineering who was holding out and said, take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat.
Take off your engineering hat. That is chilling. Stop looking at the truth and start looking at the contract.
Exactly. He was asking him to conform to the group's need, not the machine's reality. They voted to launch. The warning was ignored to maintain the launch schedule harmony.
And 73 seconds later, the shuttle broke apart.
Yeah.
It's devastating. And it shows that groupthink isn't just about people being nice to each other. It's about how hierarchy and pressure can warp the way we look at facts. We've talked government and military, but this happens in business too. And sometimes it happens to companies that seem perfect. You have the story of Swissair.
Yes, the flying bank.
That sounds like a compliment.
It was. For decades, Swissair was considered the most financially stable, technically perfect airline in the world. They were the gold standard.
Which breeds the illusion of invulnerability.
Success is a dangerous teacher. It is. In the 1990s, they started making poor decisions. But what's interesting is the structure of their board.
Yeah.
They reduced the size of their board and eliminated a lot of industrial expertise.
So they got smaller and less knowledgeable.
And the board became very homogenous. Similar backgrounds, similar values, politically connected Swiss directors.
So they insulated themselves.
They insulated themselves, and they lacked diversity of thought. This homogeneity is a key antecedent for groupthink. Because they all thought alike, they reinforced each other's bad ideas. They started believing in their own morality and invulnerability.
And what did they do?
They embarked on a disastrous expansion strategy called the Hunter strategy, buying up failing airlines, thinking they could fix them because, we are Swissair.
And they couldn't.
They couldn't. They burned through their cash reserves, and eventually the flying bank went bankrupt and was grounded. The group was so cohesive, so sure of its own excellence, that it flew right into the ground.
It's amazing how success can be the breeding ground for failure. If you think you can't fail, you stop checking if you're about to. One last example, which is a bit different. Sports. The 1999 Major League Umpires Association.
This is a great, rarely discussed case. It shows how even a union, a group fighting for its livelihood, can fall into this.
What happened?
The Umpires Association, led by Richie Phillips, wanted to gain leverage in negotiations with Major League Baseball. They came up with a radical strategy. A mass resignation.
Wow.
They would all resign effectively on the same day to force the MLB to the table.
That's a bold move. You can't play ball without us.
It was. But they fell into groupthink. First, they overestimated their power, the illusion of invulnerability. They truly thought the league would collapse without them.
Okay.
Second, they exhibited closed-mindedness by viewing the MLB not as a negotiating partner, but as an evil enemy that would definitely cave.
And what about the dissent? Surely some umpires were thinking, wait, what if they just accept my resignation and I lose my job?
Many were. But there was intense pressure toward uniformity. There was self-censorship. Many umpires didn't want to resign but went along with the group because they didn't want to be seen as scabs or traitors to the union.
And what happened?
The MLB called their bluff. They just accepted the resignations, they hired replacements, and promoted minor league umpires. The strategy failed completely because the union leadership had lost touch with the reality of their leverage.
They believed their own hype.
They bluffed, but they believed their own bluff, precisely. And dozens of umpires lost their careers because of it.
Okay, we've seen the wreckage, we've seen the burnt-out hulls of ships, shuttles, and careers. Let's pivot to Section 3. The cure. This is the most important part. How do we stop this? If I'm a leader or just a team member, what can I do?
Right.
Giannis didn't just diagnose the problem, he offered prescriptions, right?
He did. And they are very practical. They aren't vague things like be more open. They are structural changes. First and foremost, the critical evaluator.
What does that mean in practice?
Leaders must assign the role of critical evaluator to every member of the group.
Every member.
Every member. This is crucial. It's not just saying, feel free to speak up. It is explicitly telling the team, your job, the reason you are in this chair, is to poke holes in this plan. If you agree with me, you aren't doing your job.
That changes the incentive structure. It changes the norm from agreement is good to critical analysis is good.
Yes, it gives people permission to be the bad guy without feeling like a bad friend. Second, leader silence. As we saw with Kennedy in the missile crisis, leaders should not express their opinion when assigning a task.
This is so hard for leaders.
It's incredibly hard. Leaders usually get to be leaders because they have strong opinions. But if the boss walks in and says, Okay, team, I think we should launch next week, but I want to hear your thoughts. The discussion is already over.
It's done.
Everyone anchors to next week. The leader must remain impartial initially. State the problem, not the solution,
State the problem, then shut up.
basically. Third, outside experts. Invite people from outside the group into the meetings. But here's the key. You have to allow the group members to question them.
Oh, that's important.
It breaks the insulation. It forces the group to defend their ideas to a stranger.
And there's one role that everyone knows, but maybe doesn't use correctly, the devil's advocate.
Yes. Yanis suggested assigning a specific person to be the devil's advocate for each meeting. But there is a trick to it. You have to rotate that role.
Why rotate it? Why not just have Dave from accounting be the guy who always says no?
Because if it's always Dave's, everyone just tunes Dave out. Oh, there goes Dave's being negative again?
Right.
If you rotate it, it depersonalizes the conflict. Today it's my job to disagree. Tomorrow it's yours. It legitimizes the act of challenging the consensus.
That makes sense. Now, there's a modern twist on the devil's advocate that comes from Cass Sunstein, the legal scholar. He suggests that a fake devil's advocate might not be enough.
Right. Sunstein argues that if everyone knows you're just playing a role, it's less effective. It becomes a bit of a game. Okay, you did your devil's advocate thing, now let's get back to agreeing.
So what's his solution?
He suggests a red team.
Like in the military?
Yes. A red team is a group expected to pursue an alternative strategy for real. They aren't just pretending to disagree. Their goal is to defeat the primary plan. They try to break it.
So if blue team is planning the invasion, red team is playing the role of the enemy trying to stop it.
Exactly. It forces the main group to actually defend their ideas against a determined adversary, not just a polite skeptic. It simulates reality.
That sounds intense, but effective. And this brings us to the topic of diversity. We hear about diversity a lot in a social justice context, but in the context of groupthink, it's a mechanical safety valve.
It is empirically a shield. It's not just about fairness, it's about performance. There's a fascinating study by Hong and Page from 2004. They found that diverse teams of problem solvers can outperform teams of the best problem solvers.
Wait, explain that. A diverse team beats a team of the best.
Yes, because the best, let's say the top 10 IQs, usually went to the same schools, studied under the same professors, and think the same way.
They have the same blind spots.
Right. They start to think alike, groupthink. A diverse, team-diverse in-background thought, gender, experience brings unique perspectives. They have different heuristics or ways of solving problems.
So they naturally challenge assumptions because they don't share the same assumptions to begin with.
Exactly. They don't have to try to be devil's advocates. They just see the world differently. The friction they create is actually the value.
So homogeneity is the enemy of reality testing. If everyone looks the same and thinks the same, you are flying blind.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on some modern critiques before we wrap up. Is the theory of groupthink like settled science? Or is it getting updated?
Always getting updated. It's been 50 years since Janus. There is the ubiquity model by Robert Barron. He argues that Janus was a bit too focused on cohesiveness.
Okay.
Barron says you don't actually need a tight-knit friends group for groupthink to happen. He says it can happen just from social identification and low self-efficacy.
Meaning what?
Meaning, if I just identify as part of a group, say I'm a Republican or I'm a Google employee, and I feel a bit insecure or unsure of myself, I will conform to what I think the group believes, even if I don't know the people in the room.
So even a group of strangers could fall into it if they are insecure?
Potentially. If they are looking for cues on how to behave.
Yeah.
And then there's the concept of collective illusions by Todd Rose. This is fascinating.
What's that?
It's when people go along with what they think the group wants, even if nobody in the group actually wants it.
A phantom consensus.
Exactly. Imagine a meeting where everyone votes for a plan. Afterward, you interview them privately. Person A says, I hated it, but I voted yes because B and C seemed to like it. Person B says, I hated it, but A and C seemed to like it.
No.
Everyone is privately thinking, I hate this, but publicly acting like they love it because they are misreading the room.
That's tragic. You get a result that literally 0% of the people wanted.
It happens more than you think.
And finally, is there a bright side? Can group identity ever help?
Interestingly, yes. Choi and Kim, back in '99, found that group identity can lead to better performance if the group norm is critical thinking.
Ah. So if the identity of the group is we are the people who argue and find the truth, then cohesiveness makes you better at that.
Exactly. It depends on what you are cohesive around. Are you cohesive around being nice or are you cohesive around getting it right? If your team prides itself on being brutally honest, then groupthink actually reinforces honesty.
That is a crucial distinction. It's about the culture you build.
It changes everything.
So let's bring this deep dive to a close. We've unpacked a lot.
We have.
The danger is clear. It's not just being a sheep. It's rationalized conformity. It's the illusion of invulnerability. It's mind guards blocking the truth.
It's smart people convincing themselves that the torpedoes won't work or the O-rings won't fail.
And the cure is structured conflict. You cannot rely on people just being brave. You have to build bravery into the process.
Critical evaluators, leader silence, red teams, and real diversity.
There's a pop culture reference that always comes to mind for me with this. Monty Python's Life of Brian.
A classic.
Brian is addressing the crowd of followers who are treating him like a messiah, and he yells, "You don't need to follow me. You've got to think for yourselves. You're all individuals."
And what do they say?
And the crowd chants back in perfect unison.
We're all different.
And then one lone voice from the back pipes up.
I'm not.
It's the perfect satire of the irony of mass conformity. We all think we're independent thinkers until we get in that room.
It really is.
I want to leave the listener with one final provocative thought. We mentioned the Abilene paradox briefly earlier, the idea of the phantom consensus.
Right.
The name comes from a story by Jerry Harvey. A family in Texas is sitting on a porch on a hot afternoon. The father suggests driving to Abilene for dinner. It's a long, hot, dusty drive in a car with no AC. The mother says, "Sure, sounds good." The daughter says, "I'll go if you guys want to." The husband says, "I'm game."
They all go. The terrible trip.
They drive hours, have a terrible meal, drive back in the heat, exhausted and miserable. And when they get home, someone admits, "I didn't actually want to go. I just went because I thought you wanted to."
And it turns out no one wanted to go.
Not a single person. They took a trip to hell that not a single person desired because they failed to speak up.
It's the tragedy of unvoiced objection.
So here is the question for you, the listener. Where in your life are you currently on the road to Abilene? Where are you acting as a mind guard? Where are you keeping quiet because you assume everyone else agrees? Because the odds are, if you have a doubt, someone else does too. You might be the only thing standing between your team and an iceberg.
That's the takeaway. True loyalty to a group isn't agreement. It's the willingness to speak the uncomfortable truth.
Well said. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Stay critical.